Welcome to Exposed and Broken YouTube channel. We uncover the secrets of love, betrayal, and the choices that change everything.
The grandfather clock's tick echoed through the house like a heartbeat in an empty chest. Emma flinched at each sound, 3 o'clock, marking another hour wasted in a life that no longer felt her own. She traced her finger along the edge of a glossy magazine page, not seeing the words. The silence had weight today, pressing against her skin, filling her lungs with something heavier than air. 5 years of marriage had taught her to live with silence, but today it felt like a stranger in her home, unwelcome and demanding attention. "Damn it, Liam," she whispered, her voice startling in the quiet room. Her phone screen remained stubbornly dark beside her, 2 days into his business trip with not even a cursory text. Emma caught her reflection in the window, 32 years old with eyes that had forgotten how to light up. When had she become this person? This ghost drifting through rooms, waiting for someone to notice she was fading? The memory of who she had been before Liam surfaced like a bubble breaking water's surface. That Emma had backpacked through Europe alone, had laughed until her sides ached, had never waited by a phone. That Emma would pity the woman she'd become. The sudden slam of a car door outside jolted her from her thoughts. Her heart lurched traitorously in her chest as she peered through the curtains. Lucas. Her nephew, though the word felt wrong somehow. At 28, he was barely younger than her, and the way he moved up the walkway with that confident stride made something dangerous flutter in her stomach. His smile caught the weak afternoon sunlight, transforming the gray day into something electric. Emma's fingers trembled as she smoothed her hair. She opened the door before he could knock, her practiced smile already in place. "Lucas," she said, hating how her voice softened around his name. "What brings you here?" His eyes met hers, really met them, in that way that made her feel exposed, as if he could see past the careful walls she'd constructed. "Uncle Liam left some papers," he said, but his smile suggested he'd come for something else entirely. As he brushed past her into the house, the scent of his cologne lingered, and Emma felt something inside her crack, a hairline fracture in the careful facade she'd maintained for years. The clock ticked on, marking the moment when everything began to change. "Not a bad time, is it?" Lucas asked, though his tone suggested he didn't particularly care if it was. "No," Emma lied, watching as he tossed his leather messenger bag onto her pristine couch with the casual confidence of someone who knew they were welcome anywhere. "Liam's away. Again." Lucas' eyes flickered with something unreadable. "He's always away, isn't he?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications Emma wasn't ready to acknowledge. She turned away, busying herself with straightening magazines that were already perfectly aligned. "The papers are in his study," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Help yourself." Lucas nodded, disappearing down the hallway. Emma exhaled, pressing her palm against her chest where her heart hammered against her ribs. What was wrong with her? This was Lucas's family. The inappropriate flutter in her stomach whenever he was near needed to stop. When he returned minutes later, Emma had composed herself. Or so she thought, until she noticed his rolled-up sleeves revealing a tattoo she'd never seen before, an intricate design that wrapped around his forearm like a secret revealed. "Wow. Sorry to interrupt, don't forget to like and subscribe." "That's new," she said, nodding toward his arm. Lucas glanced down, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Got it in Thailand last month." "You like it?" "It's unexpected," she admitted, unable to look away. "I'm full of surprises, Aunt Emma." The way he said aunt felt like a gentle mockery of their supposed relationship, a reminder of how little age separated them, how artificial the family connection really was. They settled on the couch, and Lucas began telling stories of his travels, vibrant tales of midnight swims in phosphorescent waters, of street food that burned your tongue but made you feel alive, of strangers who became friends in the span of a night. Emma found herself leaning forward, drinking in every word, every gesture. When was the last time she'd felt this engaged? This present? Liam's conversations had become predictable exchanges of practical information, bills, schedules, occasional comments about colleagues she'd never meet. "You should come with me sometime," Lucas said suddenly, interrupting her thoughts. To Thailand, or Bali, or anywhere. You'd love it. Emma laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuineness. Right. I'm sure Liam would be thrilled with that idea. I didn't ask about Liam, Lucas said quietly. I asked about you. The room seemed to contract, the air between them charged with something dangerous. Emma's mouth went dry as Lucas' eyes held hers, searching for something she wasn't sure she wanted him to find. I can't just, she began, but the words died in her throat. Can't just what? Live? Feel? Want? Can't just what, Emma? Lucas asked, as if reading her thoughts. Head dropped the ant entirely now, and the intimacy of her name on his lips sent a shiver down her spine. I have responsibilities, she finished lamely. Lucas leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You seem different today, he observed. More present. Emma looked away, her cheeks warming. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. His voice had dropped lower, the playfulness replaced by something more serious. I think you're finally waking up. The words struck her like a physical blow. Waking up. Was that what this feeling was? This sudden awareness of herself as more than Liam's wife, more than a keeper of an empty house? I should make tea, she said abruptly, standing. The need to put distance between them was overwhelming. In the kitchen, Emma's hands shook as she filled the kettle. She caught her reflection in the window above the sink, flushed cheeks, bright eyes. She looked alive in a way she hadn't in years. The realization terrified her. Everything okay? Lucas' voice came from behind her, and Emma spun around to find him leaning against the doorframe, watching her with that same unsettling intensity. Fine, she said too quickly. Just making tea. He moved into the kitchen, the space suddenly too small for both of them. When he reached for the cup she'd just filled, their fingers brushed. The contact was brief but electric, sending a jolt through Emma that left her breathless. She pulled back as if burned, nearly spilling the tea. Sorry, she murmured, though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for. Lucas' eyes never left her face. Don't be. They returned to the living room, the silence between them now charged with unspoken tension. Emma tried to focus on her tea, on the ticking clock, on anything but the man sitting across from her. So, Lucas said finally, how are things with you and Liam? Really? The question caught her off guard. Emma's grip tightened on her cup. Fine, she said automatically. We're fine. Are you? Lucas pressed. Because from where I'm sitting, you don't look fine. You look, he paused, searching for the right word, trapped. Emma's heart pounded in her ears. How could he see what she'd been hiding from herself for so long? You don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I think I do. Lucas set his cup down and leaned forward. I think you've been sleepwalking through your life, Emma. I think you've forgotten who you really are. And who am I, exactly? She challenged, anger flaring unexpectedly. Since you seem to know me so well. Lucas didn't flinch. You're the woman who once told me life was too short for regrets. The woman who said she'd rather make magnificent mistakes than play it safe. His voice softened. What happened to her, Emma? The words hit her like a physical blow. She had said those things, years ago, before Liam, before she'd traded passion for security, adventure for stability. People change, she whispered. They shouldn't have to disappear, Lucas countered. Emma set her cup down with a clatter. You should go, she said, standing abruptly. Take the papers and go. Lucas rose slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. Running away won't change what you're feeling right now. You don't know what I'm feeling, Emma insisted, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Don't I? Lucas stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Your heart is racing. Your hands are shaking. You can barely look at me because you're afraid of what I might see. Emma's breath caught. Lucas, please. Please what? He asked softly. Please stop making you feel something? Please stop reminding you that you're alive? The air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Emma knew she should step back, should put distance between them, but her body refused to move. "I'm your aunt," she whispered, a final, desperate defense. Lucas's mouth curved into a sad smile. "We both know that's not what this is about." Before Emma could respond, the front door opened with a bang. They jumped apart as Tyler, Lucas's cousin, stepped into the living room, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene before him. "Am I interrupting something?" he asked, his tone making it clear he thought he was. Emma's heart plummeted to her stomach. How much had he seen? How much had he guessed? "Not at all," Lucas said smoothly, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. "Just picking up some papers for Uncle Liam." Tyler's gaze shifted between them, skepticism written across his features. "Right," he drawled. "Papers." Emma forced a smile, though her face felt frozen. "Can I help you with something, Tyler?" "Actually, Uncle Liam asked me to pick up the same papers," he said, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. "Funny head sent both of us, isn't it?" The implication hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Emma's cheeks burned with shame and something else, anger at being made to feel guilty for a crime she hadn't even committed. "Not yet." "Well, Lucas already has them," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "So your trip was wasted?" Tyler's eyebrows shot up at her tone. "Apparently," he said coolly. "I'll let Uncle Liam know the papers are in good hands." The emphasis he placed on good hands made Emma's skin crawl. As Tyler turned to leave, he paused, glancing back at Lucas. "Coming, cuz?" Lucas hesitated, his eyes finding Emma's. A silent communication passed between them, a promise, a question, a possibility. "Yeah," he said finally, though his eyes never left Emma's face. "I'm coming." As they left, Emma stood frozen in the center of her living room, the silence rushing back in like a tide. But this time, it felt different. This time, the silence wasn't empty, it was filled with the echoes of everything Lucas had awakened in her. She pressed her fingers to her lips, remembering the way her body had responded to his nearness, the way her heart had raced when their eyes met. This wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. As if some dormant part of herself had suddenly stirred to life. The grandfather clock struck 4, the sound reverberating through the empty house. Emma made a decision then, standing in the fading afternoon light. She couldn't, go back to sleep. Whatever happened next, whatever it cost her, she needed to feel alive again. The doorbell rang, startling her from her thoughts. Emma moved to answer it, her heart in her throat, already knowing who would be standing on the other side. "Lucas." "I couldn't leave it like that," he said simply. Emma stepped back, letting him in, letting the future in with him. As the door closed behind them, she knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. And for the first time in years, that thought didn't terrify her, it thrilled her. "I shouldn't have come back," Lucas said, though he made no move to leave. He stood in Emma's living room, the papers had supposedly come for forgotten on the coffee table, between them. "Then why did you?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She remained by the door, as if keeping an escape route open. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so achingly familiar it made Emma's chest tighten. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about the look on your face when Tyler walked in. Like you'd been caught doing something wrong, when all we were doing was talking." "We both know it wasn't just talking," Emma said, surprising herself with her honesty. Lucas' eyes darkened. "No," he agreed. "It wasn't." The admission hung between them, dangerous and exhilarating. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as Lucas took a step toward her, then another, until he stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I see you, Emma," he said softly. "The real you, not the version you've been pretending to be. I've always seen you." Emma closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the truth in his words. How long had it been since anyone had really seen her? Since she'd allowed herself to be seen? "This is wrong," she whispered, but she didn't move away. "Is it?" Lucas' voice was gentle. Or is it just unexpected? Emma opened her eyes to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're my nephew, she said, a final and desperate attempt to maintain the boundaries between them. By marriage, Lucas corrected. And we both know that's not what this is about. He was right, and the realization terrified her. This wasn't about family ties or social taboos. It was about connection, raw, undeniable connection between two people who recognized something in each other that the rest of the world had missed. I don't know what to do with this, Emma admitted, her voice breaking. With how I feel when I'm with you. Lucas reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face with a tenderness that made her want to weep. You don't have to do anything, he said. Just stop pretending you don't feel it too. The touch of his fingers against her cheek sent electricity coursing through her. Emma knew she should step back, should put distance between them, but instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, craving more of the connection that made her feel alive for the first time in years. I'm married, she whispered, though the word felt hollow, a technicality rather than a truth. To a man who doesn't see you, Lucas said, his voice gentle but firm. To a man who's left you alone in this house for so long you've forgotten who you are. The truth of his words stung, but Emma couldn't deny them. Liam hadn't really seen her, in years. Their marriage had become a comfortable arrangement, a habit neither of them had the courage to break. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice trembling. Lucas' gaze never wavered. I want you to be honest, with yourself, with me. I want you to stop hiding behind excuses and obligations. I want you to remember what it feels like to want something so badly it terrifies you. Emma's breath caught. She did remember, was feeling it right now, standing in her living room with a man who wasn't her husband, a man who made her pulse race and her skin tingle with awareness. I'm scared, she admitted. Good, Lucas said, his lips curving into a smile that made her heart skip. Fear means you're alive. Before Emma could respond, the sound of a car door slamming outside shattered the moment. They jumped apart, guilt and panic flooding Emma's system as footsteps approached the front door. Tyler, Lucas muttered, moving away from her just as the door opened. But it wasn't Tyler who stepped into the house. It was Liam. Emma's blood turned ice as her husband's gaze moved from her to Lucas, confusion giving way to suspicion. Lucas, Liam said, his voice carefully neutral. Didn't expect to see you here. Uncle Liam, Lucas replied, his composure remarkable given the circumstances. I was just picking up those papers you mentioned. Liam's eyes narrowed slightly. I don't recall asking you to pick up any papers. The lie hung in the air between them, damning in its transparency. Emma's heart pounded so loudly she was certain both men could hear it. Must have been a misunderstanding, Lucas said smoothly. Tyler mentioned you needed them, so I thought I'd save him the trip. Liam's gaze shifted to Emma, who forced a smile she didn't feel. I didn't know you were coming home today, she said, hating the tremor in her voice. Clearly, Liam replied, his tone cooler than usual. Meeting wrapped up early, so I thought I'd surprise you. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Emma felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice, one wrong word away from disaster. Well, I should get going, Lucas said, breaking the tense silence. He gathered the papers from the coffee table, nodding to Liam. Good to see you, Uncle Liam. As he passed Emma, their eyes met briefly, a silent communication that spoke volumes. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a finality that left Emma feeling strangely bereft. Liam watched her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Is there something I should know? He asked finally. Emma's heart raced. Had he sensed something? Had Tyler said something? What do you mean? She asked, aiming for casual and missing by a mile. You seem different, Liam said, studying her with an intensity he hadn't shown in years. Nervous. I'm just surprised to see you, Emma said, which wasn't entirely a lie. You didn't call. I wanted to surprise my wife, Liam said, his tone softening slightly. He crossed the room to her, placing a kiss on her cheek that felt like a brand. Is that so strange? Yes, Emma wanted to say. Yes, it's strange because you haven't surprised me or noticed me or really seen me in years. Instead, she forced another smile. Of course not. I'm glad you're home. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. That night, as Liam slept beside her, Emma stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying every moment with Lucas. The way Head looked at her, the way Head seen through her carefully constructed facade to the woman beneath, the woman she'd almost forgotten existed. I want you to remember what it feels like to want something so badly it terrifies you. She did remember now. And it did terrify her. Not just the wanting, but the implications of it, what it meant for her marriage, for her life, for the careful equilibrium she'd maintained for so long. Emma turned onto her side, studying Liam's profile in the darkness. Once, she'd loved him with a passion that consumed her. Now, she felt only a distant affection, a comfortable familiarity that had nothing to do with desire. When had they stopped seeing each other? When had they become strangers sharing a bed, a house, a life? The realization brought tears to her eyes. It wasn't just Liam who had stopped seeing her, she had stopped seeing him too. They had both retreated into the safety of routine, the comfort of predictability. But now, Lucas had awakened something in her that couldn't be put back to sleep. A hunger for connection, for passion, for the kind of recognition that made her feel truly alive. As dawn broke, Emma made a decision. She wouldn't act on her feelings for Lucas, couldn't, not while she was still married to Liam. But she also couldn't continue living a lie. She owed Liam the truth, even if that truth destroyed the comfortable life they'd built together. She owed herself the truth too. When Liam woke, Emma was already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed with her hands folded in her lap. One look at her face and he knew something was wrong. Emma? He asked, sitting up, suddenly alert. What is it? Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself for what she was about to say. We need to talk, Liam. About us. About what's happened to us. Liam's expression shifted from concern to wariness. What do you mean, what's happened to us? We've disappeared, Emma said simply. Both of us. We've been going through the motions for so long, I don't think either of us remembers what it feels like to be truly alive. Liam stared at her, his face a mask of confusion and dawning realization. Where is this coming from, Emma? Is this about Lucas? The question caught her off guard. What? I'm not blind, Liam said, his voice hardening. I saw the way you looked at him yesterday. The way he looked at you. Emma's heart raced. Had it been that obvious? This isn't about Lucas, she said, though the lie stuck in her throat. This is about us. About the fact that we've been living like roommates for years. So you're what, bored? Liam's voice rose with anger and hurt. Looking for excitement with my nephew? That's not fair, Emma said, though guilt gnawed at her. I'm trying to be honest with you. About how I feel. About how unhappy I've been. And how long have you been unhappy? Liam demanded. Or did this sudden realization only come after Lucas started coming around more often? Emma flinched at the accusation, but she couldn't deny the truth in it. Lucas had been the catalyst, the mirror that showed her what her life had become. But the emptiness had been there long before him. I've been unhappy for a long time, she admitted quietly. I just didn't want to admit it. To you or to myself. Liam's anger seemed to deflate, replaced by a weariness that aged him before her eyes. And what do you want me to do with that information, Emma? What do you want from me? It was the same question Lucas had asked her, but with a completely different meaning. What did she want? The answer came to her with surprising clarity. I want to feel alive again, she said simply. I want to remember who I was before I became just your wife. And I think maybe you need the same thing. Liam was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the bedspread between them. When he finally looked up, Emma was startled by the resignation in his gaze. You're right, he said quietly. We have disappeared. Both of us. I just didn't think you'd noticed. The admission broke something open between them, a truth they'd both been avoiding for too long. So what now? Liam asked, his voice hollow. Emma took a deep breath. I think we need time apart. To figure out who we are outside of this marriage. To remember what we want. And if what you want is Lucas? The question was direct, cutting through pretense. Emma met his gaze steadily. I don't know what I want yet. That's the point. I need to figure that out without hurting you more than I already have. Liam nodded slowly, a sad smile touching his lips. I think I've known for a while that we were heading here. I just didn't want to see it. Neither did I, Emma admitted. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared realization settling between them. It wasn't the explosive confrontation Emma had feared, but something quieter, sadder, the mutual acknowledgement of a love that had faded so gradually neither of them had noticed until it was gone. I'll pack a bag, Liam said finally. Stay at my brother's for a while. Emma nodded, tears filling her eyes. Despite everything, the finality of the moment hit her hard. I'm sorry, she whispered. Liam reached across the bed, taking her hand in his. Me too, he said softly. For not seeing you. For not seeing us. As he packed, Emma sat in the living room, the grandfather clock ticking away the seconds of her marriage. By noon, Liam was gone, the house emptier than it had ever been. But for the first time in years, Emma didn't feel alone in the silence. She felt present, awake, alive with possibility. The doorbell rang, startling her from her thoughts. Emma moved to answer it, already knowing who would be standing on the other side. Lucas. I heard, he said simply. Tyler told me Liam came home early. Emma nodded, stepping back to let him in. He's gone, she said. We're taking some time apart. Lucas' expression remained carefully neutral. I'm sorry, he said, though his eyes told a different story. Are you? Emma asked, surprising herself with her directness. A small smile touched Lucas' lips. No, he admitted. Not if it means you're finally choosing yourself. Emma closed the door behind him, the sound echoing through the house like a period at the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I don't know what happens next, she said honestly. Lucas' eyes met hers, filled with a promise that made her heart race. That's the beauty of waking up, Emma, he said softly. You get to decide. As the grandfather clock struck noon, Emma felt something shift inside her, the final pieces of her old self falling away, making room for whoever she was about to become. And for the first time in years, she couldn't wait to find out who that might be. 3 weeks passed in a blur of discovery. With Liam gone, Emma found herself rediscovering parts of herself she'd forgotten existed, her love of early morning runs, her passion for photography, her preference for spicy food that Liam had never enjoyed. Small freedoms that accumulated into a larger sense of self. Lucas was there, but not constantly. He gave her space, seeming to understand instinctively that she needed time to find herself before she could find her way to him. When they did see each other, it was for coffee, for walks in the park, for conversations that stretched late into the evening, building a foundation that had nothing to do with family ties and everything to do with genuine connection. They hadn't crossed the line into physical intimacy, though the tension between them grew with each meeting. Emma was grateful for his patience, for his understanding that she needed to end one chapter properly before beginning another. But the world didn't pause for their careful dance. Rumors spread, as rumors do in close-knit families. Tyler's suspicions had become whispers, whispers had become speculation, and speculation had become judgment. Emma felt it first from Liam's sister, who called under the pretense of checking on her, but whose voice carried an undercurrent of accusation. Then from mutual friends, whose invitations suddenly dried up. And finally, from Liam himself, in a text message that cut through her newfound peace like a knife. People are talking. About you and Lucas. Is it true? Emma stared at the message, her stomach knotting with guilt and defiance. Was it true? Not in the way people assumed. She hadn't slept with Lucas, hadn't betrayed her marriage vows in the physical sense. But emotionally? The connection between them was undeniable, had been growing even before she and Liam separated. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on the truth. We're friends. Nothing has happened. But I won't lie to you, there are feelings there. I'm trying to figure them out. Liam's response came quickly, a single word that carried the weight of his hurt, don't. Emma set her phone down, her hands shaking. Don't what? Don't feel? Don't explore? Don't live? The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Emma moved to answer it, expecting Lucas, but finding Tyler instead, his expression a mixture of concern and judgment. Can we talk? He asked, not waiting for an invitation before stepping into the house. Emma closed the door behind him, steeling herself for the conversation to come. What's on your mind, Tyler? He turned to face her, his resemblance to Lucas suddenly striking, the same jawline, the same intensity in his gaze, though lacking the warmth that made Lucas' presence so magnetic. You know what's on my mind, Tyler said, his voice carefully controlled. The whole family is talking about it. About you and Lucas. Emma crossed her arms, a defensive posture she couldn't help. And what exactly is the whole family saying? That you left Liam for his nephew, Tyler said bluntly. That you've been having an affair. The accusation hung in the air between them, ugly and distorted. Emma felt a surge of anger at the simplification, the reduction of her complex emotional journey to something tawdry and cheap. That's not what happened, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. Liam and I were over long before Lucas became important to me. But he is important to you, Tyler pressed. Important enough to destroy your marriage? To tear apart the family? Emma's patience snapped. My marriage was already destroyed, she said sharply. Liam and I were living like strangers. We both knew it. We just didn't have the courage to admit it until now. And Lucas? What's his excuse? Tyler's tone hardened. He's family, Emma. He knew you were married to his uncle. He didn't pursue me, Emma said, though the defense felt hollow even to her ears. Hadn't he, in his way? Hadn't they both been drawn to each other, despite the complications? He didn't stop it either, Tyler countered. He saw something vulnerable in you and he exploited it. The accusation made Emma's blood boil. Is that what you think of me? That I'm some vulnerable woman being manipulated? I'm 32 years old, Tyler. I make my own choices. Even if those choices hurt people who love you? Tyler asked, his voice softening slightly. Liam is devastated, Emma. He thinks he lost you to his nephew. Do you have any idea what that's doing to him? Guilt twisted in Emma's stomach, but alongside it was a growing certainty that she couldn't live her life to spare others pain. Not anymore. I'm sorry Liam is hurting, she said honestly. But staying in a marriage that was already dead wouldn't have spared him pain either. It would have just prolonged it. Tyler shook his head, disappointment evident in his expression. And Lucas? What happens when he gets bored and moves on to his next adventure? Will it have been worth it then? The question hit a nerve Emma hadn't realized was exposed. What if Tyler was right? What if Lucas, with his wanderlust and his freedom, couldn't settle into something lasting? What if she was just another experience for him, another story to tell? I don't know what will happen with Lucas, she admitted, her voice quieter now. But I do know I couldn't keep living a lie. Not for Liam, not for the family, not for anyone. Tyler studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You've changed, he said finally. Yes, Emma agreed. I have. They stood in silence, the gulf between them wider than the physical space separating them. Finally, Tyler sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so reminiscent of Lucas it made Emma's heart ache. Just be careful, he said, his voice softer than before. Not just for Liam's sake, but for yours. Lucas, he's not the settling down type. Before Emma could respond, the front door opened, and Lucas himself walked in, stopping short at the sight of Tyler. The tension in the room thickened instantly, the air charged with unspoken accusations. Tyler, Lucas said, his voice carefully neutral. Didn't expect to see you here. Clearly, Tyler replied, his gaze moving between them with renewed suspicion. I was just leaving. As he passed Lucas, he paused, leaning in to say something too low for Emma to hear. Lucas' expression hardened, but he didn't respond, his eyes finding Emma's over Tyler's shoulder. When the door closed behind Tyler, the silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. What did he say to you? Emma asked finally. Lucas' expression softened as he moved toward her. Nothing important, he said, though the tension in his jaw suggested otherwise. Lucas, Emma pressed. Tell me. He sighed, closing the distance between them until he stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. He said, if I hurt you, he'd make me regret it. Emma blinked in surprise. He said that? Tyler? A small smile touched Lucas' lips. Apparently, he's appointed himself your protector. Despite his disapproval. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Tyler, who had come to confront her about her relationship with Lucas, was also warning Lucas not to hurt her. The complexity of family dynamics never ceased to amaze her. He thinks you'll get bored, Emma said, voicing the fear Tyler had planted. That I'm just an adventure for you. Lucas' expression grew serious. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with a tenderness that made her breath catch. Is that what you think? Emma leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. I don't know what to think anymore, she admitted. Everything's happening so fast. Then we slow down, Lucas said simply. We take all the time you need. Emma opened her eyes to find him watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. And if I don't want to slow down? She asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Lucas' eyes darkened. Then we don't, he said, his voice dropping to a register that sent shivers down her spine. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility. Emma knew they stood at a crossroads, one path leading back to safety, to caution, to the careful dance they'd been performing for weeks. The other leading somewhere unknown, exhilarating, and potentially devastating. She made her choice. Rising onto her tiptoes, Emma pressed her lips to his, a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something more urgent, more demanding. Lucas responded instantly, his arms encircling her waist, pulling her against him as if he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. And perhaps he had. Perhaps they both had. When they finally broke apart, breathless and flushed, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. Are you sure? He asked, his voice rough with desire but his eyes serious. Because once we cross this line, Emma, there's no going back. Emma thought of Liam, of Tyler, of the family that would judge her, the friends who would whisper behind her back. She thought of the comfortable life she'd left behind and the uncertain future ahead. Then she looked at Lucas, really looked at him, and saw not just desire in his eyes, but understanding. Recognition. The promise of a connection that went beyond physical attraction to something deeper, something real. I'm sure, she said, and meant it. I don't want to go back. Not ever. As Lucas' lips found hers again, Emma felt the last of her doubts dissolve. Whatever came next, judgment, disapproval, even heartbreak, would be worth it for this moment of absolute certainty, this feeling of finally being alive. The grandfather clock struck 3, marking not the passage of time but the beginning of something new. Something real. Something entirely her own. Thank you for watching Exposed and Broken. Hit that bell button and like and subscribe.